Global tensions are rising. National debt is at record highs. Inflation is squeezing everyone. Is the dollar's dominance at risk? I'm Jack Ryan, an analyst trained to spot patterns before disaster strikes. We're taught to look for threats from outside, missiles, hackers, rogue states. But what if the real threat is a cycle? One that's toppled every great power before us. When you zoom out, a chilling pattern emerges, a 7-stage cycle. The US is checking off boxes on a list we never wanted to be on. This isn't about politics, it's about math and history. Rome, Spain, Britain, the Soviets, they all thought they were the exception. They were wrong. The real question, how far down this road have we already gone? Because the final stage isn't a slow decline. It's a sudden collapse, and the warning signs are flashing red. Empires begin with good intentions, keeping peace, securing trade, projecting power. Spain built forts, Britain ruled the seas, the Soviets propped up states. The US built hundreds of bases, policing the world's oceans. We spend more on our military than the next 10 countries combined. The more you stretch, the thinner you get. Vulnerabilities multiply. The empire's own success becomes its anchor. The price is always higher than anyone expects. When empires face unbearable costs, leaders often quietly debase the currency instead of raising taxes. Spain mixed copper into silver coins, eroding trust and fueling inflation. The US broke the dollar's link to gold in 1971, making money printing irresistible. Every new dollar makes the old ones weaker. Prices rise, savings erode. Currency debasement is financial alchemy that never works. Every empire tries this trick. None escape the consequences. Military overreach and currency debasement lead to the next stage, the debt spiral. The government borrows not just for new spending, but to pay interest on old debt, a financial doom loop. Spain defaulted repeatedly, destroying its credit and making borrowing even costlier. Britain's debt soared after centuries of war, crippling its post-war recovery. The US now faces a debt spiral of historic scale, over $34 trillion and climbing fast. Interest payments now exceed the entire defense budget. To pay the interest, we borrow more, but foreign buyers are pulling back. The Federal Reserve steps in, printing money to buy government debt. Debt and currency debasement feed each other in a toxic loop. If interest rates rise, payments explode, forcing brutal cuts or more borrowing. If the world stops buying our debt, the government faces default or hyperinflation. The debt suffocates the real economy, crowds out investment, and makes the system fragile. The empire becomes a patient on life support, kept alive by ever-growing debt. The path of least resistance is always to borrow more, until there's nowhere left to go. Eventually, the bill comes due. The debt spiral is the point of no return. History shows you can't borrow your way out forever. An empire's strength is built on what it produces, not just what it consumes. But when production fades, the foundation rots away. Spain, Britain, and now the US, all hollowed out by offshoring and imports. The empty workshop is the empire's silent warning. Real power comes from what you make, not what you buy. When the economy decays, worthless money, unpayable debt, empty factories, the social fabric tears. This is stage 5, social decay. In Spain, order broke down. Cities filled with beggars, the countryside with bandits. The best fled. The Soviet Union's rot was visible. Cynicism, black markets, falling life expectancy, and lost faith in government. When collapse came, nobody fought to save the system. In the US, polarization is at record highs. Trust in institutions is at rock bottom. Crime rises, addiction devastates, and hope fades for millions. The American dream feels out of reach. Economic decay breeds social decay. People lose faith, become vulnerable to extremism and the social contract frays. Talent and capital quietly leave. hedging against a bleak future. Sometimes this stage ends in currency collapse, like Weimar Germany's hyperinflation, which destroyed the middle class and fueled extremism. The decline becomes personal. Fear, anger, and despair replace stability. The nation's soul is hollowed out. This is the immediate precursor to systemic breakdown. When people lose faith in the system, collapse accelerates. The warning signs are everywhere, if we choose to see them. The cracks in the foundation are spreading. The US dollar's reserve status has been our ultimate backstop, our exorbitant privilege. The world needs dollars for trade, letting us run deficits and import more than we export. Stage 6 is when the world starts to question this privilege. BRICS nations are building systems to bypass the dollar. Russia and China trade in their own currencies. Saudi Arabia is open to selling oil in yuan. Central banks are buying gold at record rates, led by China, Russia, and India. They're trading paper dollars for hard assets, a vote of no confidence. When Britain lost reserve status, it sealed its fate as a second-tier power. If the dollar loses its status, the consequences would be catastrophic. Trillions held overseas would flood back, triggering massive inflation. Our ability to fund deficits would vanish. Interest rates would skyrocket. The government would face impossible choices: default or slash spending. The standard of living would plummet overnight. The world's move away from the dollar is the final confirmation of internal decay. Other nations are heading for the lifeboats. The loss of reserve status isn't the cause, it's the trigger for collapse. The world always moves on. The empire is left behind. The clock is ticking. This is the final stage, not a slow fade, a cliff. All the pressures, overreach, debasement, debt, decay, and lost trust converge in a sudden systemic failure. Collapse is a phased transition, one moment, an empire, the next, a failed state. The Soviet Union vanished in 2 years, superpower to memory. The trigger is usually financial. A failed debt auction, a currency crash, a banking freeze. When faith in money goes, everything stops working. Imagine the US failed bond sales, the Fed prints money, the dollar crashes, imports vanish, shelves go bare. Social and political chaos erupt. The government is paralyzed. Polarization explodes into conflict. Authority evaporates. States assert sovereignty. The blueprint is always the same: Rome, Spain, the USSR. Collapse is brutal and swift. Centuries of progress unravel in months. The illusion of stability shatters. Survival becomes the only goal. Faith in currency, government, and future is lost and cannot be easily restored. The empire doesn't shrink, it shatters. Local leaders and new powers fill the vacuum. The warning signs were always there, the tremors before the earthquake. The final stage is midnight. The consequences are inevitable. The only unknown is the timing of the trigger. When the clock strikes, it's already too late. We've seen the blueprint: Spain, Britain, the Soviets. Each thought it was unique. Each fell the same way. This isn't opinion. It's a mathematical pattern, a law of history. Each stage creates the next, locking in the outcome. Leaders ignore the warnings, focused on short-term gains. The only question is when, not if. Collapse always comes faster than expected. One day you're in a superpower. The next you're scrambling for basics. The system seems stable until it isn't. When it breaks all at once. History's echo is clear. The clock is ticking and time is running out.